Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to address the notion of ditching credit cards and budgeting with cash envelopes instead. Is it worth it for you? Is the transition easy? How would you go about doing it? I will cover all of that in today's video. Now, I do have a video entirely based on how I budget with credit cards, and I will link it for you above if that is what you're interested in. But as of the last few months, I actually have been transitioning over to cash envelopes. Now, this does not mean that I've gotten rid of my credit cards, cut them up, thrown them away, or put them in the freezer or whatever other stuff people have done with their credit cards. That is not my case. I still very much use credit cards for different purposes, and I'll touch on that a little bit throughout the video. But if you're kind of on the fence about choosing completely credit cards or cash envelopes, or giving cash envelopes even a try, then this video is definitely for you. I'll go into detail of why I decided to try out cash envelopes, how I got started, and I also wanted to mention a few important notes, especially some of the things that held me back originally about cash envelopes and how I dealt with those things like safety, having all that cash on hand, maybe the convenience factor of having a card. I'll go into those kind of topics at the very end, so stick around for that. First off though, if you are new to my channel, hi everyone, my name is Lizbeth, and I make videos that help you plan for a better financial future while living your best life today. So if that is something that you're interested in, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on new weekly videos. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with why I transitioned over to cash envelopes. Like I said, I made a whole video about how I budget with credit cards, and that is because I've budgeted with credit cards for as long as I can remember. Even when I worked in the restaurant industry and made cash tips, I still budgeted with my cards and handled all my finances that way. So why now? What made me change my mind as far as cash envelopes goes? One of the main reasons was at the very end of last year, I found out I was pregnant. And not just that, but I found out that I was not going to receive any kind of maternity leave. So I knew that I was going to have to save up as much money as possible to financially prepare myself for being out of a job. Unbeknownst to me, this was going to start way sooner than my actual maternity leave because of the pandemic, but it is what it is. We are here now. But anyways, I wanted to save up as much money as I could. And I kind of looked at the areas that I could potentially save money in. And a few categories kind of obviously stuck out, like food, spending, and little things like that really add up. And that before using cash envelopes and just using my card did not really matter as much, I guess. I still stuck under my budget, or I somehow still balanced everything out. And so I didn't keep as close of an eye to it as maybe I should have. It was kind of one of those areas of opportunity, right? That I could definitely kind of dive a little bit deeper. So once I realized that those were areas of opportunity, I thought about how I would fix the problem. And obviously cash envelopes are a big thing. It's a big topic. And I thought, why not give them a try? What do I have to lose? If I don't like it, if it really does not work for me, then I just go back to how I was doing and I figure out another way of doing it. Not only that, but it was December when I officially started, and it was also Christmas month and my daughter's birthday. And those are things that I set aside sinking funds for. So I had a very specific amount of money that I could spend, and I decided to use those sinking funds, kind of take out the money and keep it in an envelope so that I really kept track of how much I was spending for both her birthday party and Christmas. And lo and behold, I had leftover money from both the sinking funds and the cash envelopes I chose to use for that month. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience because I liked knowing that I saved that money, and it had a very specific purpose, which was to go towards my baby fund. So then I decided to keep going with it, and I did so for January, February, March, and I've really been enjoying it so far. So after I've done it for a few months, after I've made the transition happen, I wanted to share with you what I've learned, what I've done, and how I'm still kind of maintaining that balance between my credit cards and my cash envelopes. So that's kind of my why and when I started and how long I've been doing it. Budgeting, I've always kind of done in one way, shape, or form. So if you don't have that part down yet, make sure you create a budget first before you start trying to dive into splitting things up between credit cards and cash envelopes. You need to set yourself a budget first, and then from there you start determining what's the best way for you to go about keeping track of that budget. And I do have a whole video about how to get a budget started that I will link for you above as well. So as far as how I got started, one of the very first things I did was make myself super cute envelopes like these. I did have stock paper, I have a Cricut maker, which is why you have the fancy lettering there. And I just kind of downloaded an outline for the envelope online. I'm not even sure where I found it, so that I could print these out, have them cut, and then fold them together. So this was definitely one of the first things that made me motivated about getting them started, the simple act of making them for myself. Next is that I made sure to keep my categories very, very simple. So I only made 3 categories. That was it. And one was food, which includes my groceries and my dining out. That's included together. My spending, which includes any spending that I do for myself as well as for my daughter. So anything related to us, anything and everything that we will consume in some way, shape, or form, that's what spending for me is. And lastly, a miscellaneous. And what I put under miscellaneous is not only a little bit of a buffer for, anything we go over in any of the other categories, but also any kind of gifts or treats or whatever that we give to somebody else. So if we have birthdays coming up for the following month, or if I had anything going on for her daycare at the time, anything like that went under miscellaneous because it's not directly for us, it's for other people or other reasons or whatever. These categories were always the ones that are just harder to track on my card because you think you have spending money in your budget, and so you buy something and then later on you realize that you actually probably shouldn't have bought that because you don't have enough money in your budget, but then you've already spent it, right? So these were those categories for me. Gas, for example, is one that is very popular in cash envelopes, but for me, I had a very specific commute. I pretty much spent the same amount every time. Any large expenses, any bills that come out of my credit card, I wasn't going to switch any of that stuff up. So these were the 3 categories that I knew that needed a little bit more control, and that by taking cash out and kind of managing it that way, I would have a way better understanding and be able to control how I'm spending that money a little bit better. So that's why I chose those 3 categories. So definitely start with just 2 or 3 categories to start you off. Even if you plan to completely transition over to cash envelopes, I still suggest starting small. And along with that, make sure that they're not so specific. Like I said, my food category combines both my groceries and my eating out. So I don't separate those 2 things. I keep it together. I always have what our normal grocery amount would be, which is about $400 a month, plus an additional $100 essentially for eating out. Although honestly, sometimes I spend more on groceries and less on eating out, or vice versa. So I like that it's not so specific that I have to borrow money from other envelopes to cover what I'm using in another envelope. For the most part, I never have to borrow. It's more common that I just have leftover amount in that specific envelope because I didn't use it for that specific purpose. And since at the end of the day, it's all about how much money you can save from your envelopes, this really comes in handy. So that's kind of how I just started my cash envelope journey, I guess you would say. Kept it very simple, very straightforward. Didn't try to add too many rules or follow specific things. If you can only do 2 categories, maybe choose food and spending, right? Those are the only 2 that you need to focus on, then choose those to start with and go from there. Once you are able to add more categories if you want, or start dividing them up a little bit further, then go ahead and do that. So for example, for me, just starting in May is when I'm going to split up that spending amount. I still have my food category where I have my groceries and dining out combined. I still have my miscellaneous, and now my spending is going to be divided into 2 categories. One, which is my spending. It doesn't say but my spending, which is money that I can spend on myself for whatever I want. And then the girls. So I have a 3-year-old daughter and 1 daughter on the way. So this is going to be kind of for them, what do I need for them, whether that be clothes, shoes, toys, whatever, that'll be their envelope. And they don't always use up stuff, so I can always roll it over and kind of save it up for something bigger. Same with my spending, but at least this way there's a good balance between what I spend on myself and what I spend on them. I think this allows me a little bit more room for reward for myself to not solely focus on spending money on them, because I think as a mom, you tend to do that. You tend to spend more money on the kids than you do on yourself. And this way it kind of forces me, in a sense, to spend some money on myself. And if I really want something bigger, then I can always just keep rolling it over until I save up enough money to buy something bigger for myself. And like I said, this took me December, January, March, April. This took me into the 6th month of doing cash envelopes to add one more category. So it is not something that I rushed. And if it works, then it stays. And if it doesn't, then I'll change up another envelope and, maybe divide groceries and dining out as another method of trying something different. I think that's one of the beauties of cash envelopes, is that you can mix and match and change as the months progress and kind of make it work for yourself as best as you can. And it's so tangible of a way to change things up that it definitely helps in figuring out what is working for you and what isn't. A few things that I wanted to point out as far as going through this transition is, number one, maintaining flexibility. Obviously, one of the things I love about having credit cards and using credit cards is the flexibility of having a card on hand and being able to pay with it, not having to worry about change, having your card saved online and, on Amazon, and just being able to click and pay, right? Not having to worry about cash is the convenience factor. And one way that I am able to still use cash envelopes is by maintaining that flexibility of still allowing myself to use cards if I need to. Especially during this specific time, it's crazy how they're telling you to do cashless options because of the germs that you're spreading between cash. I'm a very big app user. I use a lot of apps. So if there's mobile ordering involved, if I can order on my phone ahead of time and then just pick it up, it's a lot more convenient than having to go inside, ordering, wait, pay cash, and have to take out my cash and all that stuff. There's easier ways, and I love being able to use the app of some sort if that is easier for me to manage. Also, I'm a big curbside pickup person. I love picking up my groceries curbside. I don't want to have to go inside and do my grocery shopping that way if I don't need to. I have one toddler. I'm about to have a baby. The last thing I want is to go inside and do my groceries with 2 kids. Heck, I didn't want to do it with 1 kid. Even less now do I want to do it with 2 kids. So being able to do curbside pickup is a lifesaver for me. That requires me to place my order online and pay with a card. But here I am telling you that I use cash envelopes to pay for my groceries. Just to clear that up, I still allow myself to do that. I will do that. Say I pay $85 for groceries this week. Guess what? I just take out $85 from my grocery envelope, transfer it over to my wallet. The next time I'm around the bank, I go and deposit it, and then I make a payment straight to the credit card where it came out from. Everything balances out. Yes, it's a little bit more effort on my part to go and stop by the bank, but at the end of the day, I'm still keeping track of how much I'm spending via my cash envelope, but I'm allowing myself the flexibility of shopping online if I need to. I'm not stressing myself out by saying, man, I wish I could only use credit cards to manage my money because this would be a whole lot easier. That's not the case. I can directly check my cash envelopes and see if I have enough money to make that next purchase. I don't have to worry about going through my credit card transactions and adding up all the transactions that I've made to determine if I have enough money in my budget. This way I can literally just open my cash envelope. Do I have enough money in there? If I do, great, pay for it, transfer the money over to my wallet, deposit it, make a payment. Done deal. Which brings me to my next point, which is that there's no need to track your expenses if you're using cash envelopes. It was definitely one of those things that I enjoyed from using my credit card, was that I could easily keep track of, how much I spent through Amazon, how much I spent groceries and all that stuff. It's nice to kind of go back and see how much I spent. But like I said, at this point, I already know how much I should be spending on groceries and how much of a limit I can set myself for spending. So knowing exactly where that money is going is not necessary for me, as long as I know where the cap is and to not go over that cap. I had to just conform to the fact that as long as I didn't go over, it didn't matter where I spent it. If I was able to save money, great. There was no need to know where the rest of it went. So just being content with the fact that you didn't overspend or that you saved some money in that category was more than enough for me. And that's definitely helped me in just aiming to save instead of to spend everything that's in that cash envelope. Another one of those things that I was so afraid of letting go in my transition from credit cards to cash envelopes were those credit card rewards. Of course, that is one of the reasons why I loved using my credit card, was because I would rack up these rewards and then in turn use them for travel expenses and such. It is definitely a great perk to have. So I decided to do the math on my own as far as how much money I was really losing in the transition from credit cards to cash envelopes. So generally speaking, between the 3 envelopes that I have month to month, in total, they're about $700, give or take. But on average, about $700 combined between my food envelope, my spending envelope, and my miscellaneous envelope. The highest amount of credit card rewards I get from one of my cards is 1.25 points per dollar spent. So essentially, I'm getting rid of $700 worth of credit card points. In turn, if you multiply $700 times 1.25% in cash back, essentially, it is $8.75. That's less than $10 that I am losing out on. And honestly, I'm not even losing out on the entire $8.75 because, as I've mentioned before, sometimes I do curbside pickup. I do Amazon purchases and I just pay myself back via cash envelopes to the card. So I'm still earning the credit card rewards and yet I'm still using cash envelopes. So the maximum amount I can possibly lose, if you want to call it losing, is $8.75. But in turn, I find myself saving a whole lot more money just by not overspending and by aiming to save as much money from my cash envelopes as possible. That goes directly into my baby fund. Way more than $10 worth. Obviously, that's my 2 cents on that. You don't have to take my word for it. That's how I choose to see it. On the other hand, a lot of my bills that can come out of a credit card without any additional fees still come out of my credit cards automatically every month. So my car insurance, my electricity bill still come out of my credit card. I'm still earning points on those things. So like I said, I never cut up my cards, never completely stopped using them. I still have them with me. So they still earn me credit card rewards in one way or another, just maybe a tiny bit less once I switched over to cash envelopes, but just a tiny bit. And the last point I wanted to make, I want to bring this up because it is one of the points I made in terms of why I did use credit cards versus cash, which is a safety reason. I worked in banking for probably about 5 years. So one of the things that I saw a lot of, unfortunately, was people losing money or getting robbed and us not being able to help them get their money back. It's pretty much untraceable. So obviously the fear that goes into carrying X amount of money in your wallet or your purse or whatever is a very serious thing to consider. So one of the things that you do have to consider about yourself is the risk you're willing to take. I think this is one other reason why I chose to only do 3 categories, was because I didn't want to use all of my monthly money, essentially take it out of the account and then have it all together in cash. Because obviously the least amount of cash I had on hand, the safer I would feel. So if safety is one of your things, maybe start with 1 category and kind of see how that goes. Move on to 2 and so on and so forth. Don't take out all the money from the account and put it into an envelope if you're afraid of having that much cash on hand. I do take out all the money I need for the month once a month so that I don't have to go to the bank multiple times. But something that you could do if you want to go about that way is maybe only give yourself half of it into your cash envelopes and then mid-month go ahead and refill them with the rest of it. Maybe just keep it at home until it's ready to be refilled, or just go to the bank halfway through the month if the bank is really close by. So maybe that'll help you feel a little bit safer as far as like how much money you carry on hand. Also, when you do go to the bank and get money, make sure that that is the last thing you're doing before heading home. Don't go to bank and then run the rest of your errands. You run the risk of a jugger having an eye on that bank and therefore following you somewhere that's less safe and possibly stealing from you that way. So keep that in mind, and that comes from both banking experience and knowing people in law enforcement, that is the recommendation to keep you and your money the safest possible. And lastly, make sure you have an emergency fund set up before you start cash envelopes. And the main reason for that is not only because emergencies happen, a very big emergency could be you losing your cash, misplacing it, getting it stolen, any of that can happen, and that is obviously an emergency. So you want to make sure that your emergency fund more than covers whatever money is in your cash envelopes. And that just kind of gives you a peace of mind in terms of if something were to happen because of our careless mistake or somebody who wants to do bad to you, at least you're covered in the sense that you can still complete your month and take care of your family with the money you have in your emergency fund. So all those three things are definitely things that I recommend that have helped me feel more at ease in carrying money around like that. And just in general, being aware of your surroundings and stuff like that. If you keep it in a purse, if you keep it in a wallet, make sure that you have that on hand and that you're always safeguarding it. I'm definitely one of the clumsiest people when it comes to just leaving my purse wherever. But now that I have cash on hand, I do tend to be a little bit more mindful about where I keep my purse and making sure that it's close enough to me that nobody can just put their hand in there and take something. So those are kind of my tips as far as keeping yourself safe and your cash safe so that you feel a little bit better about using cash envelopes. So that is all I have for you today. Kind of my reason for why I decided to transition over to cash envelopes, when I started, how I started, and a few important things of what has helped me make the transition a little bit smoother and a lot more rewarding in terms of seeing the results in my savings. So I hope that this was helpful in some way. If you have any additional questions about cash envelopes or credit card usage, feel free to leave me a comment down below and I'll make sure I get back to you as soon as I can. If you were on the edge of cash envelopes or not, how did this video make you feel? Let me know. Will you still be sticking to your credit cards or will you give cash envelopes a try? I was a big anti-cash envelope person for the longest time. And now that I've kind of seen the results, I'm definitely a bigger believer in it now. I don't want to force it upon anybody. Do what you want to do with your situation. I'm just kind of here to give you my experience and hope that it helps answer some of your questions. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Feel free to reach out to me here through YouTube, or I also have an Instagram and Facebook that you can reach out to me at. I would love to see you there. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to y'all next time. Bye, guys.